The Bucks offense looked excellent over the last two games, particularly in the second half. But is there more to it than the Bucks simply shooting well from the three-point line? Jrue Holiday's making a case for the All-Star game, but has he left his run too late? And did Brook Lopez disrespect a potential trade target for the Bucks? Let's get into that and more.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Bucks. My name is Kane Pittman. You can see and hear me on this show Monday to Friday, and also find my work over at ESPN. And alongside me from Locked On Bucks and the Technical Foul podcast, Camille Davis, with us as she is at least once a week. And just the 1v1 podcast here. We haven't got the craziness of last week's Fatal 4-Way, so we'll be able to bounce some ideas off each other, Camille. We thank everyone for making Locked On Bucks your first watch or first listen of every single weekday. And just a little bit of, and by the way, subscribe, hit notifications, all that stuff. Jump in the YouTube comments. A little more positive the last couple of days, shall we say. Now, we know that's one bad performance from the Bucks away from turning back to the negative stuff. But for now, some happy chat over on YouTube, which we love to see. But some housekeeping. So tomorrow, the Bucks don't play until Saturday night. They've got the Cavs, obviously a team that are right in the mix for potential home court this season. They're currently losing to the Memphis Grizzlies as we're recording this. But overall, only a game behind the Bucks as we record this. So we're going to catch up with Locked On Cavs tomorrow. So if you've got any questions for the Cavs guys over there at Locked On Cavs, chuck them in the YouTube stream and we'll throw them at those guys, because they're in an interesting spot. Young team, haven't had a long playoff run yet, but they did go all in on a trade for Donovan Mitchell, which is exciting for the fan base. I think they're fired up. So we're going to get into that. Camille, I'm hitting you with a question straight away, right off the bat.
Oh, boy.
Brook Lopez got ejected yesterday. His first ever ejection in an NBA game. Very long NBA career, 15 years, I believe. So let's be honest, he can fire up from time to time. But most of the time, good-natured, funny guy, good spirits, plays the game fairly. He was asked about this ejection post-game, and I think he was a little bit miffed about the whole situation. Got into it with Gary Trent Jr. From the Toronto Raptors a little bit, ripped the headband off. I don't think it's a big deal. Apparently, it's very offensive. Now, I want to go to this post-game quote from our great friend Eric Name, who provided us with this gold on Twitter. I'll pull it up on the screen. Joe Ingles was heavily involved. Joe Ingles started interviewing Brook Lopez. And Joe said, how did the headband end up on the ground? Lopez said, I don't know. I didn't see anything happen. I thought I should have gotten -2 Ts, if that makes sense. Like, to go forward, 2 get out of jail free cards. That's how good I was. I was a good person out there. And Ingles says, I thought you were a good guy. And Lopez says, look, I thought I was a real good person. Apparently, like Steve Trent, whatever the guy's name is, he wanted to hold me. That's how good of a person I was. Steve Trent.
Steve.
This is a man that we've floated on this podcast as a potential trade target. Can the Bucks not trade for this man anymore because Brook Lopez called Gary Steve?
Hey, stranger things have happened when it comes to teammates. There was that. I mean, Russ and Pat Bev are teammates right now. Who would have ever thought that could happen? But no, the whole thing with Brook was pretty comical. I actually first listened to the game. So the guys on Tech Foul made a joke that I was in concussion protocol because I hit my head and I was like, I might have a little concussion action going on. So I was listening to the game on the radio, which shout out to the radio broadcast team, our good friend Justin Garcia over there as well. And I heard what was happening and I was like, wait, what? This doesn't make sense. So this morning I watched the game and I was just, it was even better. Just like hearing it was one thing and it didn't make sense in my head. I was like, so they're tangled up and the headband is thrown somewhere? And when I actually see it, I'm just like, this is the most Brook Lopez ejection ever. And I know he's never been ejected, but to get ejected when it looked to me as if he wasn't trying to really do anything malicious. Like they got tangled up. He grabs the guy's headband and tosses it. And that was going to be the end of it for Brook. He was getting ready to walk away. And then some pushing and shoving happened and things escalated a little bit. So the whole thing was just it was surreal, but it felt very on brand for Brook Lopez. Even the post-game quotes, like the one you just read and the other ones that came from it, it was just like, this dude is clearly upset, but his sense of humor is so wacky. And it's funny too, because there are people who aren't familiar with Brook and his personality. Like I saw some quote tweets to Eric's story and Eric's quotes. And they're just like, this guy is so weird. I don't get him at all. Like, someone get him out of here. And I'm like, he's being comical, trying to make the best out of this situation, which was bizarre all the way around.
No, I have no doubt. All jokes aside, I have no doubt that Brook Lopez knows what his name is, and he was just in a very silly mood. He just got ejected for the first time in his career, so I'm sure he knows that his name's Gary Trent Jr. Don't call me Steve. And Gary actually had a pretty good game last night against the Bucks, and he's had a couple of good games against the Bucks. He played 43 minutes. Nick Nurse, let's just say he likes to use his starters to their maximum potential when it comes to minutes-wise, which has drawn some criticism, perhaps the new Tom Thibodeau. But 10 for 19 from the field for Gary Trent, 4 for 9 from 3, 28 points in this game. He also had 4 steals, and he fits that category with these Raptors players in terms of the size that he has. I'm trying to look it up right here. How tall is Gary Trent?
6'5".
Thank you very much, Camille. But he is paid around 17.5 mil thereabouts, so he has been brought up. Now, I don't really know why the Raptors would want, Grayson Allen, Jordan Ward potential package. But all jokes aside, he's a pretty nice player, and he's only 24 years old.
I couldn't agree more. When Toronto got him, because he was in Portland before, if I remember correctly, it's like he's the kid. He's a hooper. Like he can put the ball in the basket. He doesn't have any quit in him, and his game is really nice. And we've had conversations on here before about trading Grayson Allen, if we should do it for Jay Crowder, so on and so forth. And with any trade idea, trade package, trade idea, trade machine, whatever we're going to throw out here, for me, it always depends on what you get back. So I have been somebody who is very big on Grayson Allen. I think Grayson Allen has a lot of skill sets that are valuable to this team. But if we could put him in a package to get Gary Trent back, it's kind of like, well, yeah, of course. Yeah, you go and do that. Like, and he's also a position of need as a shooting guard, where it's like, we kind of need some more guards that can create a little bit, get their shot. And, I think he'd be a great fit if it happened. Like you said, we don't know what Toronto's going to do here at this deadline.
Yeah, right.
With their record, it's kind of like, are they going to continue on this course, or are they going to just try to blow everything up and start over? Or are they going to be sellers or what at this deadline? And Toronto can really change a lot of things for a lot of teams if they decide to be sellers at this deadline.
They're 20 and 25 right now. They're in the 11th seed, so they're really in that mix with the Chicago Bulls, who are 20 and 24, and both teams feel like they're going nowhere. I would argue the Bulls are going nowhere even more, if that's even the right way to say that, just because of the age of the guys that have the injury stuff they got going on. But the Raptors have some legit guys that are valuable, but it's just they tried this sort of 6'9", lengthy, undersized stuff, and it just doesn't seem to work, particularly on the defensive end. So they've got some interesting pieces, and I think they're going to be a player. It'll just be interesting to see where they go. I don't actually know what they would want or what they would want to do with a guy like Gary Trent. He's got a player option next year for around $18 million, which again seems like decent value. So I'll be fascinated. I just really wanted to bring up that quote from Brook Lopez because I thought it was absolutely hilarious. He was on fire yesterday, and also give some praise to Gary Trent. I like him as a player. I also like Jrue Holiday, and we're going to talk about Jrue Holiday. Plenty of comments in the YouTube stream yesterday suggesting that he is making a serious push for the All-Star game. We discussed the Brook v. Jrue stuff. Do I think the Bucks can get 3 All-Stars? No. Do I think that they can get 2? I think they probably deserve it, particularly second in the East. We'll get into Jrue Holiday and the All-Star game after I talk about Built Bar. I wish I had a Built Bar right now. But if you're looking for a delicious treat and don't want all the fat and calories, you got to try a Built Bar. We just got through the holidays. Some people trying to look after their weights, but they still want to eat the snacks. We all want the snacks, let's be honest. And the good thing about Built Bar, it's healthy and actually tasty at the same time. They're so delicious, it's hard to believe that they're actually good for you. That is the fact. Flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut almond. You can go right down the list. And the good news is you can go to built.com and get yourself a box if you would like, but you don't have to. You can go to Walmart, you can go to Sam's Club right now, put them straight in the car, probably finish a box off within a day, go straight back to Walmart again, get yourself a second box. So go to Walmart, go to Sam's Club, grab a 13-bar box with all the hit flavors, including brownie batter and churro as well. You can thank me later for that, or just go to built.com the old school way, but you will not be disappointed. So Jrue Holiday. Let me open my little notebook here. I took down some notes. So in January, so overall, Jrue's having a decent year, but he was in and out of the lineup to start the season. He had that illness that everyone had. Took him probably a little while to get going. But in January, he's averaging 21 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists. 21 points, 7 assists. His assist totals have been high, getting the 4 rebounds as well. On 51% from the field, 45% from 3, and 80% from the free throw line. He has been super, super efficient. And the interesting thing is, for some reason, I think in my head when I watch Jrue, sometimes he gets himself to great position and misses those bunnies. But the crazy thing is he's shooting a career high 73% at the rim this season. This is the most efficient he's ever been at the rim. And it still feels like there's some room to improve there. And that is what Frank was talking about on yesterday's podcast. He just gets himself to unbelievable spots, using his strength, playing at his own pace, misdirection, using his opposite hand. I don't know. Is his left hand his opposite hand or his strong hand? I think they're both the same. He is just unorthodox, and he's able to finish in a variety of ways. Scorching hot January. And before I throw it to you, Grayson Allen yesterday in the postgame, this is thanks to our friend Gabe Stoltz from brewhoop.com, a fantastic man and does great coverage of the Milwaukee Bucks. Grayson Allen said the East is really good this year, and we've been floating in that second range. You don't do that in a tough conference without a couple of all-stars on your team. Here, Grayson. That's an excellent point. So, Camille, do you have any strong thoughts on Brook v. Jrue? And I guess the main question here is Jrue is on an absolute tear right now.
Yeah.
Is he timing his run to perfection?
It helps. It helps a lot. And like you said, hearing that he's shooting 73% at the rim was surprising because, like you said, It feels like he's leaving some meat on the bone there. Like he's not, there's still more that he can do. There's another level that he can reach, which was a similar conversation around Giannis and some of his struggles where like, we know he can do more. It's just at this moment, he's not operating at a peak performance, but for Giannis is putting up MVP numbers. For Jrue, it's making a really solid all-star case. You know what I mean? And it's like with this Bucks team and all that the season has been so far, we're halfway through it. Been a lot of moving pieces. This team has tried to weather a lot of different storms at this point when it comes to roster construction. And Jrue has been one of the more steady guys on the team, even though he's missed some games himself. And when he's not in the game, you notice a big difference. The Bucks are already short on ball handlers. So when you lose your primary one in Jrue, like it shows. And to see how Jrue has taken the team, put him on his back a little bit with Giannis out, with Khris out. We know they're coming back soon. Hopefully, I shouldn't say we know. With Khris, it's a hope. Fingers crossed. Hopefully, it's this weekend. Giannis, we should be seeing pretty soon. But what Jrue has been doing has been unbelievable. In the article that Eric had, I had to tweet it myself because his numbers, even over the last 4 games without Giannis, like he took what he's done this month and took it up a whole other level from there. In that article, Eric said that in the 4 games Antetokounmpo has missed, Holiday is averaging 27 points, 4.8 rebounds, and 9.8 assists in 35.3 minutes per game. He has shot 59.4% from the field and 48.3% on 7.3 3-point attempts per game. He is shooting well on high volume because the Bucks don't have another option to really take some of those shots. And Jrue is so interesting to watch because it's like the hard shots are easy for him. Somehow, some way, some shape, some form, that feels comfortable to him. That's how he gets into his rhythm, dribbling around, dancing a little bit more. Even Nick Nurse was like, I've never seen Jrue Holiday this aggressive, offensively, really looking for his spots. And he is out here really taking it up another level. I think Jrue has a really strong all-star case, especially if he can continue this play once Giannis gets back, once Khris gets back. Now, we know the numbers. He's not going to be scoring 35, 30 points a game when those two are back because you have to give the ball up a little bit more. But if he can be somebody who can just pick those spots and be aggressive when the team needs him to be, maybe Bud staggers the big 3 a little bit more to give Jrue some time to really operate and run things on his own, like the potential is high. like Jrue has a real all-star case here. It's just the fact that you think of who he's competing against, and it's like, we know he probably won't get that starter vote. That's out the window. Can he grab one of those reserve spots, either as one of the 2 backcourt members that we know of, or one of the wild card spots? We'll just have to see how it shakes out. But if I had a ballot, I'd be putting Jrue on it.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because now we're going to go through some names. And interestingly, you mentioned the offense and the different touches. And clearly, he's had an opportunity these last few games to have the ball in his hands a little bit more, be a little more aggressive, which he doesn't always either have the opportunity to do, or perhaps doesn't feel like he needs to when you got Giannis, Khris, all these guys. But I want to talk about the Bucks offense a little bit later in this show and go through some of the numbers, because if the Bucks ever get to a position where all the guys are playing, I think they obviously can do some interesting things on that end of the floor where it's been a struggle all season long. So I'm going to go through some names, Camille. Give me a yes or a no if they're an all-star. We'll start with the guards. Donovan Mitchell.
Yes.
All right. Who else have I got here? James Harden.
That's a tough one. How many games are we at with James right now? That's a tough one. James Harden has been playing well when he is on the court. If he was somebody who had a higher fan vote, I'd be like, of course he's going to make the team because, the fans here. But he's just missed quite a few games, it feels like, in my head, when he had the hamstring again.
Well, he's probably not popular among Bucks fans. We'll put a maybe next to James Harden.
Let's come back to James.
Jaylen Brown.
Jalen's an all-star this year.
Agree. Kyrie Irving.
That's another one where it's kind of like after all of his outside noise that he was making, he has settled down, and the Nets have been playing some really good basketball, and he's been a key part of that as well. It'll be interesting to see what he does with this team with KD out. I know they've lost a couple with him out now, so it's kind of like, can Kyrie lead that ship by himself? Let's come back to Kyrie after we go through a few more names. He's a maybe for me right now.
For what it's worth, I think he's in. And I think he might even get into the votes. I don't know what the votes are off the top of my head, but he's still getting you 29 a night, 28, 29 a night. I think he probably makes it in. Trae Young.
I don't think Trae gets it this year.
I like it.
He's been a little inconsistent up and down. If there was going to be an all-star guard in Atlanta, I think it actually might be Murray over him. I don't think Murray will make it either at this point, but if I had to pick one in Atlanta, I would probably go Murray.
Another Cleveland Cavalier, Darius Garland.
Not this year.
Okay. I'll tell you what, things are looking up here. Tyrese Halliburton.
Absolutely.
Indiana Pacers.
Absolutely.
Like it. DeMar DeRozan with the aforementioned struggling Chicago Bulls.
That's another one where it's kind of so thinking like James Harden or DeMar DeRozan. I think the Bulls might be a little too bad for him to make it this year.
So that's where it gets interesting. So they're the names that I had down. I went through the All-Star ballot to just look at the guys that I thought are clearly in the mix. And the guys that I said, okay, well, Jrue Holiday might be in a battle for him. Ultimately, it's coming down to the coaches. The coaches might need to decide between a guy like DeMar DeRozan and Jrue Holiday, Darius Garland and Jrue Holiday. And I think if you just look at the names, I think that Jrue Holiday should be in the mix. And I think it was Frank Madden that pointed it out at least a couple of weeks ago on the podcast. He said, stop calling Jrue Holiday underrated coaches and players and put him in the damn All-Star game. I think it was 2013, the last time he was in there. So, yeah, I think when you look at all those names like Trae Young, it's like Trae Young, Jrue Holiday, Trae Young's. Yeah, Jalen Brunson's another guard. That's a good name. He's played pretty well for a decent Knicks team. They probably deserve an All-Star. Does Julius Randle come in that mix? So all this is to say, I think that there's a pretty good case. I think Grayson Allen might be onto something. What about the bigs, though? Let's quickly go through the bigs from Brook Lopez' point of view. So Embiid is a yes. KD is a yes. Jason Tatum is a yes. And Giannis is a yes. So you got 4 absolute locks. One of them is going to be unlucky not to start. Probably Jason Tatum, in my opinion. But I think those 4 are all going to be in there. The other 3 names that I had down here, and maybe you've got some others that are in your mind, Camille, but I had the 2 Miami guys, which is interesting because Miami hasn't played well, but Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler, and then Pascal Siakam, if you give Toronto, but again, they're under 500. Any of those 3, Bam, Jimmy, I think Bam's probably it. That would be my take. Yeah. Jimmy
has a case too. which is strange that the Heat would get 2 All-Stars, given where they are right now in the standings and everything. But I think Jimmy has a case. I'm not sure if it's as strong as the case I could make for even somebody like Pascal Siakam. I know the Raptors aren't doing well, but I don't know about Jimmy.
Jimmy's putting up 22 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists. He's only shooting 32% from 3. I'm not really – I don't know what goes into it for the coaches ultimately, but those are the guys that – Brook Lopez is going to be in an All-Star game. And then – is Brook Lopez going to be the most entertaining player in an All-Star game? Potentially not. Is he going to play big minutes? Potentially not. Jrue Holiday might pull out some behind the backboard stuff. I think the biggest case for Brook Lopez being there is the mic'd up. I think he'll be hilarious. We just saw it in the locker room yesterday. This guy is an entertainer. So I don't know. As I was going through the list now, again, I don't think the Bucks are going to have 3. But the closer we get, I think they're going to have one of these 2 guys.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see what the coaches think in terms of how they prioritize the defensive stuff. Both those guys are obviously elite, so it's going to be fascinating. Let's talk about the other end of the floor, offense with the Bucks, after we talk about betonline.net, which has been our long-term sponsor of this podcast, and it's your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. But when it comes specifically to the NBA, you can get the odds for Defensive Player of the Year. And as we were just discussing, Brook Lopez should be up there. So should Giannis. Potentially, Jrue Holiday might be a long shot. But we all think that he's been ripped off over the years anyway. So you can find all your news, your odds, your info, your stats, everything you want. It's fast and easy to use. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. That's BetOnline, where the game starts. So I had someone tweet this, either tweeted at me or it was in the YouTube comments, Camille, that was said that the last 2 nights, obviously the Bucks cracked 130 points. They've only done that 3 times for the season, I think, but they've done it twice, and obviously Giannis hasn't been there. And I said, well, that's interesting. Just first of all, because we've watched this team all season long, and Giannis has carried, he's put this entire team on his back and said, if you fools aren't making any threes, I'm going to have to do everything and put my head down and score and dunk over everyone, get to the free throw line. And I think that by necessity, when Giannis isn't in there, you have to see other guys have the ball and how can they create. I think we saw some really fun offense yesterday with Jrue Holiday doing different things. Definitely Joe Ingles in the way that he's been incorporated into this team. But this is the numbers that I had to look at because ultimately in 2023, you got to hit some threes. And if you're not hitting your threes, you're going to be in trouble. Over the course of the whole season, the Bucks are 38.6% on wide open threes. Over the last 5 games, which we understand Giannis hasn't played 4 of them, they're 48%. So they've gone 10% better on those wide open threes. On just open threes, they were 32.8% for the season, which is disastrous. Over the last 5 games, they've been up at 42%. So they're just hitting threes. We thought that this team had better shooters than what we've seen. I think part of the problem is that a lot of the guys that we think can shoot have been in and out of the lineup, probably a little bit rusty, don't have their legs. But I am intrigued and I remain excited about the prospect of the things that this team can do offensively when you have Giannis and Jrue and Khris, and particularly Joe, that I think, whatever. I love Joe, but I think that he's surprised some people with the way that he can create and get things going on this offense that at times can be stagnant and just all stand around and watch Giannis.
Yeah, in that win last night against Toronto in that third quarter where the Bucks just took off and Grayson and Brook were just knocking down every three, there was a fast break and Joe's bringing the ball up and he tosses it to the corner to Grayson. And instead of watching the ball go in, he just looks at Grayson, starts running up the court, already has his hand, like about to high five him, like this is about to go in. It goes in, the arena goes crazy. And that's when I was just kind of like, this is the idea of what you hope to see with the Bucks, where it's like they're knocking down the easy shots here. And I think over the last couple of games, these last 2 wins in particular, we've been seeing a few different things happening at once. One thing that we know for sure, when the Bucks don't have Giannis, they're going to put up more threes. So shooting more threes coinciding with you hitting more threes, like, of course, it's going to make that offense look a little bit better at this point. You would hope that this would have happened. I kept hoping there would be a regression. We're going to have regression. What's the opposite of regression again? You know what I'm saying? I was hoping that after starting so poorly, at some point the Bucks shooting would improve. Didn't necessarily expect that to happen without Giannis on the floor, given how much space he tends to create for his teammates to give them those wide open looks. But they have been bombing away without him in the game, and it's coinciding with them finally starting to knock some down. We know they got the talent to do that, so we're seeing that come through. We're seeing Joe get more comfortable with his role, figuring out where certain guys like things now. Him not playing with two key parts of what the Bucks are looking to do with Khris and Giannis is problematic to a certain point. But this is a guy who tore his ACL and hasn't played basketball in almost a year. So seeing him just kind of get into his rhythm, start figuring out some of his other teammates, some of the guys that he might play with a little bit more on that second unit, it's been really cool to see, because with Joe Ingles, it was the thing of, is he starting off slow because he's coming back from injury, or is he starting off slow because it's the beginning of the spin cycle? Like, it was like, which one is it at this point? It's starting to look like he just needed some time to reacclimate himself to the game, be used to his teammates, and be able to make some plays for the team. So that's been a big, big plus for the Bucks, because as we've mentioned before, not that many ball handlers on the team, not that many guys who you would call real playmakers. And Joe has a vision. Joe is looking to set up guys. He's talking to guys. He's a good teammate. He is somebody who has brought a lot of value to this team over the last couple of games when he's been playing. So you have that going on. The threes being knocked down. You have Jrue Holiday taking control, being aggressive of the game. It's just been a different dynamic. And against these two teams, it's worked. Now, the games haven't been flawless by any means, because both of the first halves of those games were like, oh my God, what is going on with this team right now? Because I know they can play better than that. And both of the second halves that we've seen has been like, okay, Bucks, like, yes, this is how we know you can play basketball. Like, let's keep the pressure up. Like, let's do this right here. So defensively, also seeing them switch a little bit more has been interesting. They dusted off, as Eric on Tech File calls them, the olds on the Bucks, with Wes coming out and, George Hill coming out. Good George Hill game in that first night of the back-to-back. Wes as well. So it's just, things have been going right at this point for the group that's playing together in this moment. Like, they lost the 2 games in Miami. That was terrible. I know Bucks Twitter was also on edge after those games, because Miami was also missing key parts. So it's kind of like whose incomplete team can beat whose incomplete team. But when you see what they did on back-to-backs, which is taxing on the guys, we know that the NBA is cut back on back-to-backs for a reason. It's just kind of encouraging to say, like, okay, we see that this team can be what we think they can be. Now let's see what they can do once they're able to add back in Giannis and add back in Khris and give them some time all to collate together. Because, again, reintroducing in Khris, we know he's played with these guys for a while now, but there are some new wrinkles in there that he has to get used to. Him and Joe got to build that chemistry. Same with Giannis. So just when we get the full team together, it's going to be interesting to watch how they reacclimate with one another, because as we've seen over the last few games, we know these guys can shoot and knock things down. And with Giannis out there giving them even more space, if they can just consistently knock down their threes, which as a Bucks fan, we know that's asking for a lot at this point with these Bucks teams. Like, they're in really good shape. If they can do that on offense and on defense, tighten up and just play with some effort, play like they, that they care about the game necessarily, or then they're committing to the schemes. They can do that, cut down on turnovers. Like, this is the championship team that we know that they can be.
So reversion, I think. So regression, reversion, is that what you're looking for?
Right. Yeah.
But the thing is, I had an argument with Eric over this in the past, because to me, and I'm probably wrong, let's be honest, but I always thought that regression means you're coming backwards, and reversion means you're going back to the norm. Anyway, he was very, very strong that regression means both. It doesn't sound right to me, but I'm probably wrong, and that's why Eric's an award-winning sports writer in the fine state of Wisconsin. So, yeah, I think if you're Giannis and you're sitting on the bench and you're watching this team do some different things offensively and look pretty capable, and it's not just as simple as knocking down those shots. The Bucks can get open threes all the time, and Giannis creates, I would have to imagine, as many open threes as any player in the league. So, yeah, you just have to knock down some shots. We've discussed multiple times how many assists Giannis has missed out on from guys just bricking open threes. But having guys that can run offense and not feel like they're just desperately trying to hang on when Giannis is on the bench when it comes to the postseason, because Giannis will play 40 minutes, but those 8 minutes can be pretty scary. But Jrue, if he now has a partner like a Joe Ingles or Khris Middleton is out there, obviously we know Brook Lopez can be a little more offensive when Giannis isn't on the floor. And that's why, for the most part, I've still been optimistic about George Hill. He's not a major player, but he's a late rotation guy because, like, if you're asking me who I feel more confident in running offense, whether it's Javon Carter or George Hill, it's George Hill comfortably. But the defensive stuff has been a question with George, and I get that. So I think overall, Giannis has had these 4 games off. It could have been disastrous, but we've seen some positives, and people always point to and say, well, Bud, just run some offense, do some stuff offensively. Don't just let Giannis do everything and everyone stand around. But I do think for a lot of the times this year, you haven't had a lot of guys that can create stuff offensively, which is why Giannis has had to do everything that he's had to do, which has concerned me because of his body, and you want him to get to the postseason feeling fresh. So Khris Middleton's the key piece. We hope he plays in this game against Cleveland. But overall, yeah, I still would have to bet that they make a trade and maybe they add some guy, whether that's someone else that can be a little more dynamic offensively. We'll wait and see. That would be nice. But I think they have some pieces. We're just going to see this team all together. And I would love to see an 8 or 9 man rotation with all of those guys there. And you're not playing any of the guys deep in the rotation, which basically the Bucks have had to do every single game this season. I mean, they haven't had a game where all their guys have been out there. And I think you've got some interesting rotation options where we can all sit back and say, hey, I'm pretty comfortable with this lineup, even if Giannis is on the bench. And let's face it, that has not been a common thing for a Bucks fan. You see Giannis on the bench and you're just looking at your watch and saying, let's get that man back out on the floor and not give up a 10-0 run or something like that. So, yeah, not perfect, as you pointed to, Camille, but some positive stuff. And it's fun when they're scoring points. It feels like it's been a drag all season long. Tell you what isn't a drag. It's a game-to-game podcast where you can catch up on everything from around the NBA on a nightly basis. Go to your podcast app on the Locked On NBA feed. Chuck on the podcast in the morning if you miss some games, and the local hosts from all around the league will keep you up to date with everything that their teams were doing the night before. That's a Locked On game-to-game podcast on your Locked On NBA feed. Go check it out. Camille, what should we do about the Tech Foul podcast? It sounds like you were in the protocol. It's just I'm thrilled to see that you're okay. I'm feeling all right. But so you're not on the podcast?
I'm not on it this week. The guys held it down for us. The episode is out now. I have not gotten a chance to listen to it yet. And every time that I miss a week, it is always fun to go back and see how off the rails it might have gotten, because I tend to help kind of keep things online. Eric, when I'm not there, steps in. He's the LeBron of the crew in that way, where it's like he's not necessarily the point guard, but he'll run that offense. So I'm hopeful that they didn't give him too much trouble this week.
All right. Check out the Tech Foul podcast, even though Camille's not there, who's, we're biased here, but she's our favorite, but we love the whole crew. Go check it out. Like I said, Locked On Cavs tomorrow. So if you've got any question for the fellas that cover the Cavaliers on a daily basis, get them in on YouTube and we'll fire 1 or 2 of them at those guys tomorrow when we podcast with them. Camille, always a pleasure to hang out with you. And for everyone else, like I said, subscribe if you haven't done so already, and you'll know every time we do a show Monday to Friday as soon as it drops. We'll catch you guys tomorrow as we have these rare multiple days off for the Bucks. It's no fun, but we'll keep podcasting.